What is good, everybody? What is good? Welcome to Off the Ball Network. This is a special presentation here. The NBA celebrating 75 years of its existence since 1946. And this will be one of these classic podcasts for the ages. We are going to go over who will be the next 25 players that will be on the 75th anniversary list. I'm JP, and I can't do this all alone. I got my two guys with me, two experts, two NBA analysis here. I got Kenneth from the Shooters Podcast. What is up, Kenneth?
How's it going, everyone? Super excited to talk about the NBA next 25 players list because we know the top 50 was dropped in 1996. They haven't updated it in 25 years. So who better than us to update that list?
For sure. You gotta keep us updated on Off the Ball and follow us on our social media platforms and offtheballnetwork.com for all your sports needs. And my final guy, Jug, what is up, man? From Bunts and Blueses. How you doing?
Nothing much. Happy to be on. Been a little bit since I got to talk basketball on the network in general, so I'm very happy to join and sink my teeth into this. And been a while since I've spoken with you two as well on a show. Then again, for Bunts and Bruises followers, if you saw the last time Kenneth was on, you know why.
There we go. But yes, like I said, this is the next 25 players that's going to be on the list, the 25 players that's going to be hopping in with the NBA greatest 50 on the school bus. And before we get into our list of the 25 players that we all agree with, at the end of the video, I will be posting up our opinion of the next 25 players we all could agree on, except, there might be some bias, there might be some debates. Alex Caruso will not be on this list. So for all you Chicago fans and Laker fans, you might have to leave on this one right here. Another guy, everybody's favorite person in the whole wide world, JaVale McGee, is not going to be on this list. So I apologize for all the Denver fans and Lakers and Cavs fans. I can't believe it. I know I'm killing everybody's list right now, though.
If Derek Fisher isn't on here, I am leaving the network.
Bruce Bowen will not be on the list. So whoever's a Bruce Bowen.
Brian
So we got a lot of names, but we'll get into it though. But guys, 75 years of the NBA and getting ready for the 75th season. Kenneth, I'll start with you, man. Like, what does it mean to celebrate 75 years of the NBA?
I think it's just a really exciting time. I mean, we look at where we came from, the league almost didn't survive after the 70s. That's what a lot of people don't remember, is that if it weren't for Magic and Larry in the 80s and all of the great Celtics-Lakers rivalries, and then you had the Pistons and MJ, and, you think about just the history of the league, and now we got to the Kobe and Shaqs, to the Pistons teams of the mid-2000s. Then you had LeBron, you had the Celtics Big Three. Like, there's just been so many great teams, great players, and just the evolution of the game as a whole. We went from, well, if you don't have a dominant center, then you can't win anything in the NBA, to you almost don't even use the center position anymore because it's all focused around shooting and skill positions and all that stuff. So it's a really exciting time, I think. And also, look at the amount of money that the players make now. With the new TV deals. They used to not even have live games back then. They were blacked out and you'd have to watch them later on. And now you got NBA League Pass where you can watch every game. You can tune into everything. Players are making $200 million on contracts. Like, it's just an incredible time in the league.
Amen to that one, Jug. Same question to you. What does it mean to celebrate 75 years of the NBA?
Kind of like what Kenneth said, the fact that the NBA at one point, it was a tipping point on if the league was even going to survive. You think of back to its earliest days in the inception, like a lot of early franchises folded very quickly after just a couple of seasons. Like, if you go through the catalog of teams that used to exist, it's highly entertaining for a quick Google search if you want to kill like an hour on a free day. But it's one of those things where you just think about where you were to what you have become. And the NBA has become, at least in North America, the second most important sport, where at one point it probably was the fourth of the big four. in the 70s, like Kenneth mentioned. And for it to overcome baseball and hockey, essentially, and we know NFL is king sport. It has been, you can't deny it with its ratings, but the NBA being up there, like Kenneth said, with the television contracts that it has, the amount of coverage it gets, even though the NFL is king sport, if you want to talk about micro-analyzing every single thing, like the NBA is probably the king at that, because we'll take one preseason game and try to make, determinations on how a team's season is going to go, despite the fact that it is preseason. So it's just one of those amazing things to think of. And I think, like, just for myself personally, I love whenever we get these like milestone achievements. The NHL and the NFL both within the last couple of years had their 100 season anniversaries. Major League Baseball is so old, I don't know when their next like important year is, so I gotta wait on that. But we do have the NBA 75th one, and I'm just excited. Like Kenneth said, like the evolution of the game, what we've seen even in just the last decade is wild. I remember watching on NBA TV years ago when one of the best shows that they put on there was the NBA Open Court, and they had Shaq, Chuck, Reggie, Steve Kerr, and all them. And kind of like what Kenneth said, like those guys would talk about how back in the day, point guard and center were the two most important positions, and that's how you built a team. Now it's built on spacing, spreading the floor out as much as you can. Center's probably the last position you're going to pick if you went through each one today. And it's all about dominant guards in certain cases, but predominantly the wing position has become so important. You look at the last decade of finals MVPs and MVPs, Durant, LeBron, Giannis, Kawhi. And to see that in real time is something special. You don't always get a chance to witness the evolution of sports like in your lifetime, be as a parent as it is. And I think that's something I'm personally grateful for.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, yeah, y'all hit it on the nail on the head, just the evolution of the game, how we went from the inside out game to the outside in game, and seeing, what was really fascinating is like, we went from supporting these teams, and now you have these, NBA players that's so good, like Magic and Bud and Jordan, that you can market around, and everybody is pretty much their own market. Like, we don't get like the team jerseys, we get the player jerseys now, like a Trae Young to a Steph to a LeBron to a Durant and Giannis, among other people. So, 75 years and just the evolution, the European influence of the game just came up. I mean, it's just fascinating, and I'm just excited for this season. Did y'all catch the NBA 75 trailer commercial with Michael B. Jordan? That was, oh my God, that was so awesome. I love the Kobe tribute with Devin Booker. That's probably my favorite part out of all the videos and everything. And the Gary Payton stopping the bus, just giving him the nickname The Glove. So I love it. I love it. But I don't want to hold everybody too up about, celebrating the NBA season. We told you we're going to get you 25 players, and we would have to agree. And, everyone has their own list, but we're going to go on my list and see if we can all agree on it. So, I feel like the first couple players is going to be like unanimous, and it's going to be no-brainers. Like, oh yeah, he should be on the list. So my first guy that I thought of when making this list is none other than the king himself, LeBron James. Is LeBron James going to be on the next 25?
Man, I really got to give this one some thought. I just don't know. Like, is he in the top 75 players of all time? And I guess he just squeaks in, so I'll have to give LeBron his just due and have him on this list.
And what about you, Joe? Is LeBron on your list?
A lot of deliberation here, but I definitely had to make the decision.
Jurg and I were on the phone late last night just talking about does he qualify for the list?
Exactly. We had to go through everything. It was a painstaking process, required a lot of flow charts that are in my other room here. But ultimately, we decided, yes, LeBron James is definitively on this list.
Yeah, it was kind of hard for me because, like, I just didn't like the decision when he went to Miami. No shots at Mo because, I love Mo to death. Yeah, he went to Miami. But, we have the OTBN, the decision, and we was thinking, LeBron, is he on this list? He's a top 3 NBA player of all time. Should he be on the next 25? I don't really want to put him on there personally. I'm just joking. But no, LeBron James is definitely going to be on the list. So, yes, LeBron, we can all agree LeBron is on the 25. So that's one. The next person I had on my list, and man, I wish he was still here today, the late, great Kobe Bryant.
No
He was
debate
the first one on my list, so that's a no-brainer.
There will be no debate in any basketball conversation that he's on this list, without a doubt.
No, like we'll mess around with LeBron. Like Kobe would stare you down. He'd be like, "What'd you say?" And then you'd be like, "I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry."
Yeah, if I didn't have him on this list, he would have been telling me to take off this Laker jersey. So I probably would have had like Orlando Magic. That's the only thing else I had in this closet. So yes, the late great Kobe Bryant, rest in peace to Bean. And so Kobe makes the list. My third person on the list is a guy that really is one of the greatest scorers of all time for his size, a guy that could handle, guy that really wants to win, a guy that kind of been controversial, when he went to the Golden State Warriors and thought they would have stayed with the Thunder. And now he's a Brooklyn Net, is KD, Kevin Durant. Is Kevin Durant the next person on the list for the next 25?
Easily. I think he's the greatest all-around scorer in NBA history. Like, I think that no one has mastered every aspect of scoring the basketball like Kevin Durant has. Like, he gets to the mid-range and it's automatic. Like, and his size just makes it impossible to guard. So, yeah, Kevin Durant's easy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He's one of those guys that transcends any era. You drop him at any point, and he will be excellent and one of the greatest players of his era. He's probably, honestly, if you dropped him like the 60s or 70s, he'd be considered an alien, because a 7-foot guy like that, that could shoot, that has all those skills. Like Kenneth said, it's nowhere near a stretch to say he is the greatest scorer in the whole history of the NBA. Not just modern era, not just, the 80s and 90s. He is that dude. 4-time scoring champion is pretty low. Like, when he was young, he was winning them early. We all thought he would get up to like 7 or 8, and maybe he would actually be if he had never gotten some of his injuries. So that just goes to show that as great as he is, as Hall of Fame lock, this list lock as he is, he could have even had more accomplishments and been better, without a doubt.
For sure. I mean, like, you could just take a look. I mean, he beat LeBron James in both game threes of these 2 straight NBA finals. They faced each other and just stared him down and was clutch. Yeah, great score. Guy that really, he really took his all-around game when he was with the Warriors, and you saw that he was passing and he was playing defense, and the guy tore his Achilles up, and then he came back and was just dominant and probably could win MVP this year. That's for another discussion and everything. But yes, Kevin Durant, so far in his career, is definitely going to be hopping in on the score bust. And my fourth player I have on the list is a guy that really changed the game. Probably one of the most influential players. If you think about the top 4, the Mount Rushmore of most influential, I think this guy's going to be on this list. A guy that changed the way a three-point shooter is and made the game into a three-point shooting type of game instead of an inside-out game. We have Golden State Warrior Steph Curry.
Yeah, I think that's automatic. Unlike the Jets kicker who just missed an extra point. So, yeah, this is automatic. Like, Steph he's so transcendent in the way that he shoots the basketball. It's not just the way he shoots it, it's the volume he shoots it at. That's what's changed ultimately, because, we can talk about great shooters, like even in the 80s, like Larry Bird, but they weren't shooting 15 threes a game sometimes, 23s a game sometimes. That's not to say that they couldn't. It's just they weren't doing it back then. That's just how much it's changed even in the last 5-10 years. So Steph's automatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Steph is at the forefront of the three-point shooting explosion. It was gradually increasing in the 2000s. It went up a little bit in the early 2010s, and then when him and the Golden State Warriors dynasty began, the math of the game changed. He is that dude. And then just with accomplishments, multi-time scoring champion, 3-time NBA champion, 2-time MVPs, to this point, the first and as of now only unanimous MVP in NBA history. Like, that is the definition of a lock. No, ain't no old heads can deny that he belongs on this list. We'll have some old guys, but we gotta start with the current ones. And yes, Steph is on this list without a doubt.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think he's first or second all time in 3-pointers made. This guy is just unbelievable. The way he shoots the ball, his ball handling, and is determined to win. The killer instinct's a lot different than Kobe and MJ's. He just smiles, but then he will kill you on the court every single night. So yeah, Steph Curry would be on that school bus and everything. And don't bring Aisha, Steph. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And the next player on the list is a guy that came from South Carolina, came around my area, a guy that went to Chicago his senior, and definitely everybody was really recruiting him high, in high school. And a guy that, changed, Minnesota's franchise and went to the Big Three in Boston and won a championship and yell at people and trash talk people. A guy that intensifies the game and all about team. Kevin Garnett, KG. Is KG on this hopping in on the bus on the 25?
Yeah. There's not much to deny there. An MVP on his resume, a championship on his resume, defensive player of the year. A lot of people forget that first year in Boston, he was the defensive player of the year. Yeah, I mean, just look at the accomplishments. Dude was a 15-time All-Star, 9-time All-NBA, 12-time All-NBA defensive team. Like, that was just at another level. And like you said, I think on intensity alone, you have to put him on the list. Just if you don't, he's probably going to hunt us down. But yeah, KG on this list, he's a rare breed, and that's what all these guys have been so far. And the rare breeds, they're on the list.
Mm-hmm. Kenneth, is he on your list?
Yeah, he's on the list. I think if Kevin Garnett does not go to the Minnesota Timberwolves do not have a franchise in Minnesota still. I truly believe that, because they were really struggling for a decade there. And we saw what happened with the Vancouver Grizzlies, similar situation, and then they ended up moving. Well, they never drafted a Kevin Garnett caliber player. And the fact that he didn't accomplish all that he wanted to in Minnesota, not due to fault of his own, but then he went on to Boston. He won the championship there, could have won multiple there. They're actually, in my opinion, one of the more underachieving franchises in NBA history for that team. But I do think he's easily on the list. He was special at the power forward position.
I agree with you on that, and the only way he'll be on my list, or he'll be on my bus is if he eats some Honey Nut Cheerios. No shout out Carmelo or anything, but, I'm just kidding. Kevin KG, I mean, what else could you say? A guy that faces up, guy that with the intensified trash talk, KG's on this list. The next person on the list that plays the same position as Kevin Garnett, Dallas Mavericks legend, guy coming from Germany, guy that really, everybody was trying to put up their legs and try to shoot the basketball. Guy 7 foot, I mean, unbelievable. That 2011 one with Dallas against the Heat, unbelievable. Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah. Dirk, what he did in that 2011 finals it's top 3 finals performance for me all time, easily, because they were such heavy underdogs, and everyone will point to, well, LeBron didn't play well and whatever. That's not Dirk's fault. Dirk went up against D Wade, Chris Bosh, very talented Miami team, and he gutted that one out for them. They were trailing late in some of those games, and he's just driving to the basket, finishing, hitting his classic Dirk fade. He's top 5 or 6 in scoring all time. He's easily on this list.
Yeah, the influence he brought to the game with helping, he's one of the first ones that helped show what the big man could do, that brought the European style over. We always talk about the effects of international competition and what it brought in. Dirk Nowitzki is one of those guys, came in, changed the game, and it really helped to what we see now today. With Dirk, like you guys said, that's a top 3 finals performance all time, top 3-5 even playoff run. When you think about, they beat Portland in round 1, and it was a solid Portland team, Brendan Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge. They swept the Lakers in round 2, right? And that was still peak Kobe. Pau Gasol was there, Andrew Bynum before he became a head case. He kind of became a head case in that series, actually. So, I mean, back off on that. And then they beat the young Oklahoma City Thunder team that would make the finals the following season in 5 games in the Western Conference Finals before taking down the Big 3 Heat. That in and of itself is special. Combined in 14 All-Star games, an MVP award. Dirk's there, man.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. I love watching his game and play. Probably the best international European player I have ever seen. Luka, like I said, you got to give him more time and all that. He might get that, title if he plays longer and hopefully nothing happens to him. He's on the trajectory, but Dirk is just unbelievable. Kenneth, who you got, as the person that could hop up on the bus? What's the next player?
So I'm going to give you guys 4 players in order that weren't included the first time around. And, we may be divided on this. We may agree on these, but I think it's tough because they selected 50 players, and that meant that there were some guys that got left off the list. And I don't want to make this just a list of, the next 25 years, because I think that there's some from the past that need their just due. So first of all, Dominique Wilkins. The reason why I have Dominique on that list, he's the all-time leading scorer of the Hawks. Yes, the Hawks won a title when they were in St. Louis, but that 80s Hawks teams, he was battling with Larry Bird. He was battling with Isaiah Thomas. He's just a special scorer. He's a multiple-time slam dunk contest winner. One of the best dunkers of all time, not just in the contest, but in-game as well. So I wanted to put Dominique on there. I'm curious to see if both of you have him on your list.
He's on my list.
He's on my list because you can't think of Atlanta without Dominique Wilkins, even though you think of Trae Young, but Trae Young don't have the trajectory and longevity like Dominique Wilkins. And Dominique, everybody wished that he would have won the title, but he came in the wrong time when Larry Bird was winning, Magic Johnson was winning, Philadelphia was winning, Detroit, Chicago was coming up. I mean, he was just in that era that it was just tough for him to win. Him and Larry Bird in that semi-conference finals in '88 when they were going toe for toe, one of the best one-on-one type of games I've ever seen. So yes, Dominique should have been in that top 50. He should have been in that top 50. There was some that I was questioning that got into that top 50, but he should have been a top 50 player.
He's one of those guys that his peers say that he should have been on that list. Years ago, I referenced it again, but NBA Open Court, they kind of did something similar to this. They did their next 10, and Dominique was the first or second name in their next 10 because all those guys knew he should have been on that list without a doubt. This dude went toe to toe. Like you guys said, he was in such a hyper competitive era. It sucks that he didn't win a championship, but he went at it with Bird, with the Pistons, with Jordan in the playoffs. The dude deserves a lot of credit. I believe his 9-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, a bunch of seasons of 25 plus points a game.
Yep.
Without a doubt on the list. He's one of the older names. I don't have a lot of them, but he is one of the older names I have on my list, Kenneth, because he comes to mind as should have been there.
Exactly.
So the second name was also listed on that same show in Bob Mcadoo. And the big reason why I had Mcadoo there, I find it tough to not have someone who is deemed the most valuable player at some point in their career being left off of the list, because that's saying that you were the very best player in the league that season. He's also a 5-time All-Star. So it's not he had one good year. No offense, Derrick Rose had one good year. His was more so due to injuries, but had one good year. And then, the rest after that, he's a 5-time All-Star. So he had a 5-year stretch where they clearly believed that he was a top 10 to 15 player in his conference, probably in the league in general. So I have Bob Mcadoo on my list because I can't leave a league MVP off of that list who also had longevity of playing 14 years.
Absolutely. He was a Hall of Famer, like you said, MVP. Funny, I was actually looking at his Basketball Reference earlier today. He has still had a couple seasons of 25 plus points per game and didn't make the All-Star team that year. Now, one of those seasons was funny enough on the Knicks. I'll let Kenneth hit a joke there if he wants to. But at the end of the day, Bob Mcadoo should have been there. He's actually, when you talk about bigs stretching the floor, he's actually one of those guys that was different in his era. Yeah, he was one of the first. When you talk about patient zero for this kind of stuff, the first guy to do it, he was that. He would step out mid-range a little bit farther. There was no three-point line back then, so did he probably had a couple long balls? Who knows? But yeah, Bob Mcadoo for certain belongs on that list. If you're a Hall of Famer, your name, because there's so many, maybe not necessarily should be on the list, but you should be up for consideration. And the fact that back then they didn't put him on, there's so many Celtics and Lakers players, man. That's probably why he got pushed out. We do him justice. We make sure he's on here.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's on my list. I mean, like I said, I ain't going to repeat it. A great score, in his prime, won the MVP, finally got that title with the Lakers, but he was the bench player because that Laker team had a bunch of Hall of Famers on it. and him coming off the bench and scoring that basketball. Oh yeah, Bad Mcadoo deserves to be on this list and all that. Like, we think of KD, how KD was a scorer and all that. Bob Mcadoo was like a KD in the 70s, in terms of adjusting, the way they score and all that. There was no 3-point line then. Yeah, Bob Mcadoo deserves to be on that next list.
Okay, so the next two names that I have, they're players who at the time were playing, but I think they wanted them to wait and see with these guys because it's like, okay, right now they're all stars. They're really good players on their team. They're taking their teams deep in the playoffs, but let's just see how much further they go. They weren't prepared to put them there yet. Oddly enough, they put Shaq on there after like 3 years, and these guys got drafted in the 80s and weren't on there, but I digress on that. At least they got it right with Shaq, as they said on the show. They got it right, so it's fine. But first guy's Gary Payton, because when we're talking about two-way point guards, he's top 3, top 4 on that list as far as he's a lockdown defender. They called him the glove for a reason. And he wins a title late in his career, past his prime when he was with Miami. But we saw him take those Supersonics to the finals. Like, this guy was legit. Him and Sean Kemp were an absolute force in Seattle. So I have Gary Payton there. Also, people forget he's a good distributor, good scorer as well. Like, it's not just his defense. So I've got Gary Payton.
Yeah. Yes, I have him on my list too. 9-time NBA all-first defensive team as a guard, like defensive player of the year, and the only guard to win it, point guard to win it. Yes, his assist numbers. I think he's a 9-time NBA All-Star, I believe. Yeah, Gary Payton deserves to be on this list. A lot of people don't really give Gary Payton a lot of love and respect, but when you watch his highlights, them Sonic teams, like, they always had to go through the Phoenix Suns or the Houston Rockets. They finally got to the finals, but lost to, arguably the greatest team of all time in the, Chicago Bulls in that era. Like, Gary Payton should definitely be on the list. He's on my list.
Yeah, same decade. A literal decade of all NBA defensive first team means, like, everyone said, okay, you're the best defensive point guard in the game. With it, like, there is no debate, there is no second guessing. You're the dude, like you guys said, only point guard to ever win the Defensive Player of the Year award. It's an argument too many that had he been put on Jordan from the very beginning of the series, how would the series have ended?
It could have been different. Yeah.
Now Michael has his opinion on that.
Mike's got his
opinion on that.
He was laughing.
But if you
go just on numbers, exactly. If you go just based on tape and numbers, like, it is, I think, the fairest of what ifs in regards to any of those Bulls finals. So yeah, Gary Payton first certain is on the list, and the championship was just like a nice, like, farewell bow at the end of an amazing career. Like, he's one of those guys who deserved it, and of course, got it with this team, so it made even better.
Yes, I agree.
All right, and then the last guy, the second place, I think currently, or third place now in all-time 3 points made, in Reggie Miller, because Reggie, like we talked about Dominique with the Hawks. When you think the Indiana Pacers, it is Reggie Miller and a very distant second place when it comes to those teams. He took them to the finals multiple times, and he's a special player in the fact that he played, 18 seasons with Indiana. He was constantly battling the Knicks, battling Jordan. Like, it was him that was taking those big shots, and I think that he deserves his just due, so I have Reggie Miller.
So, like you said, 5 conference finals appearances, an NBA finals appearance, 5-time All-Star, third in the all-time 3-point list. I just barely did not have him in my top.
Because the thing is, like, the people that are tuning in, if we don't agree on a player, that does not rule them out, because later on we're going
to make a total list.
We'll make having 3 is that if 2 have them later on, then there will be some debate there. So
we're all just, like, saying a couple names, And at the very end, we're gonna make the total concrete OTBN list.
Yeah.
And like they said, it's 3 votes. That's why it's perfect to have an odd number of people here.
Yes.
Because then when Jurg like disrespects Reggie Miller, then like they're
He's 26. I'm at 26.
Oh man. So yeah. I had a star beside Reggie Miller, and I love Reggie Miller. Carried the Indiana Pacers, and when you think Indiana Pacers, you think Reggie Miller, one of the most clutch shot makers of all time. It just sucks. He was in that same boat as like a guy that couldn't get over hump because Jordan was playing in that same era, was winning titles. And
when he finally made it, he had to deal with Shaq and Kobe.
Exactly. And Kobe was coming up, and it was hard. And then plus, he could have had the title that year, but Malice at the Palace happened. So he could have easily had a title. It would have been a whole different argument if he would have won the title, and we would have put him in a different light. I actually do have him on my list, but I put stars right beside him because, like I said, last night I was debating on him because, there was a couple scores that I was thinking of, and I was like, oh, these are up for debate here. But then Reggie, carried that franchise to Indiana. That means a lot more, and was a marketable and I don't think we're ever going to see a player that could be marketable in India like a Reggie Miller, like Paul George, but Paul George didn't play long, in Indiana. So I do have Reggie on my list.
Okay, so we can come back to that one. Drew, why don't you give us a couple players that, we have a few that we can rattle off that are, I think more automatic than Reggie, so.
Yeah, I think I kind of want to name a couple of the names here that I think there's a little bit of discourse to have here, because I think we all know there are definitely a couple more big names that once they're said, it's like locked in all 3 without a doubt. So the first name I'm gonna go with one of the older names that I had. So I did have 4 of the old names. Reggie wasn't one of them, sadly, but this guy was there, and I think it's healthy discourse. Like if Reggie gets on the top 25 for us, but this guy doesn't, I wouldn't be mad at all, because I think it could go either way. But I have Dennis Johnson as the 4th guy that I collected. Wasn't on the top 50 list when I actually went through it, which really surprised me. 3-time champion, was a 5-time All-Star, 9-time All-NBA defensive team. He was known as a defensive guard in his era. Won a Finals MVP award. He was part of the lone Seattle Supersonics championship. Technically belongs to OKC now. And made some All-NBA teams as well. Like, he was one of the most, he was the definition of a floor general for his time. Like, he was a guy that Larry Bird respected personally on those Celtics championship teams. He knew how to run the game. Like, when you talk about traditional point guards from back in the day, Dennis Johnson was one of those guys. And I had to put him on there because, to not have DJ, it surprised me. I was like, oh, okay. Like, I looked at the list 3 times. I'm like, Dennis Johnson's not here? I saw Magic Johnson, then I didn't see Dennis Johnson. I'm like, oh, there should be one more Johnson on this list. So I'm putting DJ up for vote. What do you guys think?
Man, I'm glad you brought up his name. I mean, I was debating with him too as well. There was a couple of guards that I had over him before he made the list. As much as I love DJ, I was just thinking to myself, did he benefit at all because he was on them great Celtic teams with Bud, Paris, and McHale? And I'm not saying that they couldn't win a title without him, but you don't really think Dennis Johnson with the Celtics. You think Bud, Parrish, and McHale, but you don't think Dennis Johnson and what he did for those Celtics. I think they age a little bit more than Dennis Johnson, which is kind of sad to say. If he would have kind of still played with the Seattle Supersonics a couple more years and everything before hopping off to Boston, maybe he'd be on the list. Maybe he could have got more credential and got more individual success. But I just couldn't put him on this list, man. I just couldn't.
He's close for me because if we're talking 2-way guards, he's up there. He's up 9-time all defensive, whether it's first team or second team, doesn't matter. 9 times your peers voted you as one of the top 4 guards defensively in the league. So he's close. He's also got the Finals MVP. He's got the multiple titles. He's multiple-time All-Star. I see the argument there, and I think the issue is now when we come back to this, because obviously we know he's not on there based off of right now, but we are then weighing, okay, the guy with the Finals MVP, not necessarily the numbers as much, versus Reggie, the guy with the longevity with the franchise, but not the championship. And so we'll revisit it, but I see what you mean, because DJ might even get the nod for me, because while he's not on my list, thinking about it now, if he's the better two-way player, then you got to value defense as well. And that's always what I try and do. Even when I did my top 100 current players list, like I tried to weigh defense a lot heavier than a lot of other lists would. So I see why Jurg would have him there.
Great list, by the way, that you can find at offtheballnetwork.com, and if you've listened to Breaking the Game within the last couple months.
Amen. Put in that plug.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't even have to plug it. That's what's great. So.
I got you, Kenneth. I got you back. So the next game I'm gonna next name I'm gonna put up here is a guy who I personally think, like, I don't think it should be too much discourse about him being out. He's where I'm gonna focus a little bit on a couple modern players here, because I think the conversation really gets interesting when we try to add in some of the biggest names of the last 10 to 15 years, right? Because while we try to give credence to those that came prior, we know the list is going to be heavily skewed to players from the past 2 decades. Yeah. So I'm personally, actually 2 guys back to back here that I think the conversation is interesting. I have Dwight Howard as one of them. Like, to me, for some reason, whenever Dwight is brought up for conversations like this, like Hall of Fame or like a list like this, there's so many people that question it. To me, a 8-time All-Star, 5-time led the league in rebounding, 2 or 3 times in blocks, 3-time in a row Defensive Player of the Year, only player to three-peat the Defensive Player of the Year award in NBA history. Like, I don't think it should even be a question that he is a Hall of Famer. Like, people try to question. I don't understand why people are putting doubt on that. But on a list like this, you look at, as we talked about, the center position and how it's faded out. At his athletic peak, he was the bona fide best center in the game, and he was probably the last center that in his time you looked at it as like you could have built a finals contending team around, which they literally did, because they did make a finals appearance with him and 1 or 2 separate appearances in the conference finals from memory. So to me, Dwight should be on this list. Like, maybe not no doubt, but I think he's in my top 25 for a reason.
I do have him on my list. That's another name I put in terms of stars. Like, and then you mentioned the stats, 8-time All-Star, 3-time straight Defensive Player of the Year in a row, took a Magic team to a finals in 2009 where we thought we were going to see LeBron and Kobe, but actually we saw Dwight versus Kobe. People were kind of arguing back and forth because, after, like, when he went to LA, he kind of just dwindled down and didn't really got into his mind. But people forget he got hurt. He got hurt. So he was very injury prone. I thought him and Horton would walk out in Houston, but it actually really didn't, though. And then the only way I would put him in, the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't put him as a first ballot, but the only way I would put him as a first ballot Hall of Famer is if he could get a title, at least a title, because a title will mean a lot to put you in a different argument and everything. And he won a title with the Lakers, and I'm like, okay, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He got the title. He got what y'all want. What's so much else that he needs to do to go into the Hall of Fame or to be put on this list? He did everything you could. He was the best center in the game at that time when it was faded out. We was talking about Dwight Howard, Brook Lopez, Andrew Bynum. Dwight was far ahead of both of them at his peak and all that. I think he just gets so much hate because, people like Shaq would try to hate on him because of, and I think Shaq's just a hater, and the guy was just so athletic, man. And yes, he's on my list. He is on my list.
He's on my list as well. I think it's easy. I don't think Dwight even needed a title to be first ballot, because you look at how dominant he was defensively. And here's the difference between a guy, because everyone loves to point to, well, Dwight was just Ben Wallace. Dwight was not Ben Wallace, because Ben had no offensive skills.
No, yeah.
He literally did nothing offensively.
Yeah.
Dwight could catch lobs. Yeah, he didn't have the best arsenal in the post, but he didn't have to, because he was so athletically gifted that he was dunking all the time. He was able to finish with both hands over each shoulder. He had those basic moves that you needed. He took the Magic to the finals because of him, not because Ben had Billups and Hamilton and Prince and all these guys. Like, it was him and shooters. That's who went to the finals that year. So Dwight was easily on this list for me. I think a lot of people are jaded because if you're like 15 years old, you didn't get to see Dwight when he was in Orlando. And they're like, well, but who knows? Because he was on like Atlanta and he was on the Lakers and he was on the Hornets and like, forget those years. We get it. Dwight's been on every color scheme in the NBA. That doesn't mean that he's not on this list for even that like 7-8 year stretch that he had in Orlando and in Houston. He was still pretty good for a couple years there.
Amen.
Yeah. And the injury part, by the way, like it was a back injury, like, and to be athletic like that, like when your back is screwed up at that, like you lose your athleticism.
You can't do anything.
So that's my second name I'm gonna put here. Now the next two, I think this next one, I'll admit a little bit of bias to it, but I think there's a case that he could be within, if not the top 25, like maybe even the next 5 after that. And this, the fourth guy I'm gonna name, I'm gonna piss a lot of people off because he's still so young. So my next name is Chris Bosh. A 10-11-time All-Star, 2 NBA championships to his resume. When you look at the evolution of the game and what the stretch big has become, Chris Bosh was a big reason for that because he became that in Miami and became such a valuable floor spacing option. And a big thing, the perimeter defense that we see a lot, not a lot, but certain big men have today, Chris Bosh was that. He was valuable in Miami's defensive scheme as a big who could go up on the perimeter for pick and roll and actually play good pick and roll defense against what other teams were trying to do. He had the block in the finals against Danny Green, which was all ball, by the way. So thank you, Spurs fans. And yeah, like he played a pivotal role to 2 championship teams. And honestly, and maybe this is part of why I'm doing it, he could have had 4 more years of all-star production, but it was the blood clots that ultimately did him in. And yes, while technically speaking, we don't know, quote unquote, he was an all-star the 2 seasons that ended prematurely due to the blood clots. Like we forget that. He was voted in properly. And to me, being voted in as a reserve means a little bit more because that means the coaches who know the game of basketball voted you in. So there's, I think, at least a case for Chris Bosh. Just so I can give my last name here really fast so you guys can give on both of them. Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I think, to me, 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, one of the, I think, 3 guys to win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season, won All-Star MVP and Finals MVP in the same season. I think only MJ and maybe one other player did that. Hakeem. There have been 3 seasons in NBA history of 27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists on 55% field goal shooting, all 3 of them done by Giannis. One player averaged 30, 10, and 5 in the NBA Finals on 60% shooting. That was Giannis this past year when they got the championship. He got the Finals MVP award. Yes, there's still plenty of room, technically speaking, but a resume like that, and I'm taking what the NBA did. They put in Shaq before he got his championships. Giannis got his with 2 MVPs. Put
Giannis is in regardless. Like, if Giannis retired right now, he is on this list.
Yes,
he is a multiple-time MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year, a champion, a Finals MVP. That alone gets you on this list. Like, the stretch that Giannis has had over the last 3 or 4 years is enough to get on this list. I don't care what anyone says, because for me, like, yeah, people will say, well, you're projecting him to. Doesn't matter where he is right now. Like, Giannis has been good for what, 5-6 years? Is that how long we're saying that he's been like at that elite level? Like, not the early Giannis where we couldn't figure out how to say his name. Like, now we learned to spell his name. He's that important. Like, like, what more is there to say than that? Because no one else would go out of their way to learn how to spell Antetokounmpo. Like, that's how good he is. So he's on my list easily.
Man, I thought you was gonna make me mad and say Drew Holiday or Chris Middleton or something like that. No, Giannis, yeah, he's on my list too. I mean, like Kenneth said, if he retired today, he's probably gonna be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's gonna be on the next 25. He's always probably like a top 30 player of all time. And he's just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. So, and you know, being a 2-time MVP means a whole lot. And there's another guy too on the list that I got where we talk about a little later on. Could be a little controversial on it though. But and then winning Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same season. Like I said, the only 2 people that only done it was Jordan and Hakeem. And Hakeem won it.
So when it comes to the Bosh argument, I want to list one player before I give Bosh's, because I think this could be my bias clouding why I have this guy on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I have Anthony Davis on my list. But that being said, Bosh has done what Davis has done for the longevity's sake. I think Davis has done it better over his stretch. So I could be completely wrong in maybe I have Davis there too soon. Like, having Giannis there, like, I think is completely fine based off of, like, he's actually been an MVP. He's actually done defensive player. Like, he's done all that stuff. So I think Giannis there is fine. But I could be biased in thinking Davis is already there when he may have more still to prove. So do either of you have Davis on your list? Because if you don't, I'm willing to take Davis off to put Bosh on because he has the longevity, not just with Miami, but also in Toronto as well.
I actually have Anthony Davis over Chris Bosh on my list.
So you have both. Okay.
No, I don't have Bosh on my list.
Oh, you don't have Bosh?
I don't have Bosh. I have Davis. That Chris Bosh argument, because he's super, super close to me. I was thinking with Anthony Davis, like, yeah, he got a title. I think he made more defensive teams than Bosh did. And then we see more of his prime than Bosh, because I feel like we saw Bosh, like, his prime was he had like a 3 or 4 year before he went to Miami with Toronto.
Yeah, he had like 2 or 3.
2 or 3, yeah. And I was thinking to myself, if he would have stayed in Toronto a couple more years and stuff, maybe I would have him on this list, because individual success, I feel like he probably been on this list. What he did in Miami, I don't really think Chris Bosh like that in Miami, even though he contributes so much to the championship teams. I think more LeBron and D Wade. But, okay. I mean, Bosh, the 11-time All-Star, that's huge.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. So, him and Davis, I'm just like, ooh, it's tough.
Do you have Davis on yours?
Just barely, no. Like, him and Reggie were right there for me.
This one, that Bosh.
See, so why don't we revisit these two later? Because we'll put those in the category of, like, the Dennis Johnson Miller. Right?
Yeah.
So I have them there. So currently, as we have it, so we've got LeBron, Kobe, Mcadoo, Wilkins, Payne, Dwight, Durant, Garnett, Nowitzki, Curry, Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
That makes 11, right? Now I'll throw out 2 names that I think we can quickly touch on because I think they're automatics. Tim Duncan, guy that we didn't mention. Yeah. Big fundamental, greatest power forward of all time. What more needs to be said? Tim Duncan's on the list. Dwyane Wade, on the list. Easily. He's the 3rd best shooting guard of all time. I don't care what anyone says about Jerry West. I think he's more of a point guard than a shooting guard anyways. And I think Wade's better than him anyways. So I'm not too concerned. So I have Dwyane Wade on my list. That takes us to 13, which means that we have crossed the halfway point of the list, which is huge. Only took us 48 minutes, guys. Like, this is huge. It's huge that we've got to this point. Okay. Next player that I wanted to mention is a top 5 point guard all time, even without the championship, Chris Paul.
Yes.
I think Chris Paul's easily on this list.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have Chris Paul, you just really hate Wake Forest, or you hate the Hornets for
you hate winning. You hate winning.
You hate the Clippers. You hate a lot of things, and like Chris Paul just embodies a lot of those things. And then the other small player that I wanted to mention was Allen Iverson.
Yes,
I think Iverson makes this list.
Oh yeah.
Although weirdly enough, I have Jerry more of a point guard, and I've got Iverson more of a shooting guard, a small shooting guard at that, because we know Allen didn't do a lot of passing. So I don't know if we can have him as a point guard as much as he's like Lou Williams. He's like just a small, a way better Lou Williams. I'll give him that. But scoring guard, Allen Iverson. So that takes us to 15. JP, who are a couple more players that you would have on your list?
The next person, this one is going to be a good one here. James Harden.
Ooh.
James, this one is going to be interesting. Now, he won, he did win MVP. He got into the MVP discussion like every single year that he could have won. He could have won it in Kobe's year in 2015. And then him and Westbrook fought it out in 2017. And what he did in that Houston franchise, was just unbelievable the way he scored
on them?
basketball.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We'll give him his years before he quit.
What he did in Houston was unbelievable. I mean, you think about that Western Conference Finals. I mean, they could have easily went to the finals that year if Chris Paul didn't get hurt, against the Warriors. Like they had the Warriors down to the wall, and like I said, like there was nobody that could. I mean, he could score 50 or 60 in his sleep. Like, I feel like Horton would probably be like he's still playing now, and hopefully, if a title gets it, he might be in a different argument. So, Horton, what do you think? Is Horton on y'all's list for the next 25?
He's on my list, without a doubt.
I think you just look at he's a sixth man of the year.
Sixth man of the year, yep.
And then he goes on and is dominant in Houston for a decade. Like, I don't care what anyone says. Like, you can hate Harden for the way that he plays, the ticky-tack fouls, whatever. James Harden, was averaging 35 points per game one year. What more needs to be said than that one scoring season? And then he did it for another 8 or 9 years. So I think Harden's easy. And I think the other guy that you mentioned is easy in Russell Westbrook. If we're talking about, how long he's done it. Really think about it. Westbrook's been in the league since what, 08, 09?
Yeah, 08.
08, 09 was his first year.
He's averaged a triple-double 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Over a 5-season stretch.
Yeah.
He's an MVP. He's gone to the finals. He hasn't won the finals, but, he lost to LeBron and Wade. No shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen him do it. We saw him do it last year in Washington. He was OKC. I think he's the greatest Oklahoma City Thunder player of all time, due to the longevity. There's greater, Kevin Durant is the best player to play for it, but Westbrook is the greatest Thunder player. There's a distinction between the two there. Much like Kawhi is the greatest player to ever play for the Raptors, but Kyle Lowry is the greatest Raptor of all time. So for me, Westbrook's easy. I don't know about you guys.
He's on my list. Look, when it comes to lists like this, you have to put anything aside. I'm not the biggest Westbrook fan, and I've openly admitted it on several episodes with Kenneth as well. But Westbrook is without question on my list. You can't not put the guy who has 4 finished seasons, average a triple-double over the last 5 years, but 4 of them definitive triple-double, an MVP award. Like you said, I think it's an important distinction to make when you talk about the greatest player to have ever worn your jersey, but what a player did in their time there. And he is the best OKC player of all time when you include the fact that he stayed there longer than KD, and he meant more to that team because of that. So yeah, I have Westbrook in my top 25 without a doubt. That dude, he's another one of those guys where it's if he's not there, he's just gonna stare at you really?
Jerg, who's another guy that you would have on there?
We said a lot. All right, so this one I want to.
This one's on my list, by the way. So
nice. I figured JP when I saw JP's reaction when I said Westbrook, and it was ooh, yeah, he's there.
I'm interested to see if this guy is on y'all list because he doesn't have so many individual achievements, which kind of surprised me looking back because he's a 10-time All-Star. He hit one of the biggest shots in NBA history, and he's a 2-time champion. But Ray Allen, he is the current leader in career threes. Now, Steph is going to overtake him this season. But I think Ray Allen should be on the list because, people forget, man, in his era, he was that dude. He was a pure sniper. In his time in Milwaukee, where they could have gone to the NBA Finals in 01, that Allen Iverson year. The Bucks were about to be the team that were going to deal with the Lakers there. And I think they were a game away because they went to game 7 in those conference finals. He was still good. He was more than just a 3-point shooter, by the way. He slashed, he was athletic, he had a couple dunks. Again, this kind of with Dwight and some of these guys, a lot of people only remember the later stages of their career where they're just a role player, but that's not who Ray Allen was. He was at one point a top 4 shooting guard in the league, you could say. It was at his peak. It was Kobe, AI, T-Mac, and then Ray Allen. All 3 of those guys that we just put in front of him are Hall of Famers. And 2 of them for sure we have on our list. So I got Ray Allen there. And again, a current all-time 3-point shooting leader. Steph is going to overtake him, but still, that does mean something.
He's on my list.
So JP has him. if we are putting Allen on because he's not on mine, then I'll take Reggie off because Allen is ahead of Reggie in that aspect. He's won the title. You know, like a lot of the stuff that like Reggie did, it's almost like Allen like slightly did better when you look at it. So I'll take Reggie out of consideration to put Ray Allen on because I think, you know, even he said when they did their show before, like, look, if Ray Allen's not there, like I'm not putting my name on there. So,
so
I think I'll put Ray Allen on there to solidify him as like a clean sweep to have on there because yeah, Steph's gonna pass him, but like people forget those Bucks years, those Supersonics years. Like he was the dude, like he was the man. So Reggie is unfortunately taken out.
Bye bye, Reggie.
Probably no Indiana Pacers. So people really love Paul George.
To bring up just another name so we can like keep moving on here.
Yep.
I kind of don't know if this guy will get a unanimous bias. Carmelo Anthony. Like, I can tell by JP's reaction this is going to be good. I got Melo on my list. Like, 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, won a scoring title. Like, that dude, when we talk about scores, like, Kevin Durant is the premier scorer of his era, and to me and Kenneth of all time. But, like, if we're talking about just the modern era, Melo is probably the number 2 behind Kevin Durant. Like, from three-point... From the 3, he can pull it up from 3. He has a great mid-range. Like, while we meme it today, like, the jab step that he has, like, he catches guys on that, can fade away, can attack the basket, especially at his peak in Denver. Like, there were some pure explosive plays that he had. No, like, sometimes few and far between, but Melo would attack the rim at his peak years in Denver. I think he deserves to be on the list because... I don't know, man. Like it kind of feels wrong to not put him there.
He's on my list. I thought Melo was actually one of the more obvious ones for me because just look at his longevity. Like the longevity of him consistently being a 25 point per game scorer in the NBA on teams that went to the playoffs. They may not have gone as far. That's not a shot at Melo. Like a lot of the times, like who's he getting eliminated by in Denver? Kobe, Duncan. Who's he getting eliminated by with the Knicks? LeBron. So, like, if we're going to fault the guy for losing to really good all-time players, like, then there's a lot of guys that we got to take off this list because a lot of them we got to take Allen Iverson off. We got to take Harden off. We got to take Westbrook off. Like, I think Melo's easy for me.
I actually don't have him on my list.
Wow.
I actually don't have him
Stunner.
on my list. He was He was close because I had him like, I was like, God, I love Melo's game. I saw the accolades and I was like, I couldn't take Bob Mcadoo off that list. It was him or Mcadoo. It was him or Mcadoo. And I was like, Mcadoo deserves a lot more respect and should have been in that top 50. I have him over Carmelo. Carmelo was super close. Just because the way he was scoring the basketball and, you know, the Denver in his prime, he was unbelievable. I wish he would have. Hopefully he wins a title this year with the Lakers because if he does win a title, I might have to take somebody off my 25 list and add him on. So, yeah, unfortunately, he's not on my list, though. I just couldn't, you know, do it over Bar McAdoo. And
so I got 2 point guard names that I have because, like, we're up to 18 now. So we're starting to get close.
We're starting to get close.
We're starting to get close. So if both of these guys are on here, then we're up to 20, and then we're going to have some debate after that. But the first one,
18 for like all 3 of us agree, right?
For all 3 of us.
All 18, yep.
Yeah. First one is Jason Kidd.
I have him.
Jason Kidd for me, like his Dallas years were great, but his Nets years, like took a pretty underwhelming. Like I like Kenyon Martin, I like Richard Jefferson, not as an analyst because I think he's garbage, but as a player, I think he is pretty solid. Like I think he's just a dick to a lot of people, and I just don't like it at all. So
he's a LeBron hater. He's a LeBron fan.
I'll be perfectly honest about my hatred of Richard Jefferson, but I don't think he really cares either. So good on you.
Richard Jefferson will not be on the Shoot Shoot podcast.
Yeah, and he's not getting an invite either, so I don't really care. Jason Kidd, for me, it's easy. Like, he took a pretty underwhelming Nets team. Him and Vince tried to do it later on with the Nets. Didn't really work. And then he put in some really good Dallas years. So, for me, Jason Kidd. So, that takes us to 19.
Yeah, I agree.
And at 20, I have to mention him. Otherwise, I'm going to get deported because I already hated Chris Bosh. So, Steve Nash.
I have him on the list.
I don't think you can have a back-to-back MVP not on the list that is probably top 3 passer of all time of the basketball, top 4, because you'd have him with what, Magic, Stockton, and Paul. Like, those are the list. And I would have him as a better passer than Chris Paul, even, because I think what he did is just special. So, Steve Nash, you guys have him?
Five-time league leader in assists, 8-time All-Star, 50-40-90, 7-time All-NBA, 2-time MVP back-to-back. Like, he was on this list without a doubt.
Easily.
All right, so that takes us to 20. Now, I think that is the last point guard that we will have, unless JP
I got one.
Okay, so who is the point guard that you would have on this list?
This one is up for debate. It was so hard for me to not include him, but it was hard. Tony Parker. Like, Tony Parker, 6-time All-Star, Finals MVP in 2007, 4-time NBA champion. I understand if you don't have on this because he played with Duncan and Ginobili and all that, but when you think about Tony Parker's impact, with the Spurs, when you think about that 07 one, that they had in the playoffs and in the finals, Tony Parker was just unbelievable. Tony Parker was so unbelievable. And you think about that 2013, against Miami. Tony Parker was unbelievable.
He was torching us.
He was torching.
He probably would have won Finals MVP if they had won that series.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. He would have been a 2-time Finals MVP. He would have been in a different discussion. But 6-time All-Star and, like I said, 4-time champion. I mean, I can't really underestimate not having Tony Parker on there. I mean, it's up for debate because, it was him. Dennis Johnson was, it was so tough, to not have him on the list. But yeah, Tony, what y'all think? Is Tony Parker on y'all's list?
So I'll say this. I want to wait so he's not technically on my top 25, but I want to wait to see if we have any other, all three of us agreeing names before we get to these last couple of spots. Because I'm already willing to not have Dennis Johnson on this list. I will supersede that to a Tony Parker without a doubt. But I want to wait and see who else we're gonna have, because I do have a couple more names here that I think I only have 2 or 3 names actually left that we haven't mentioned yet, who I want to just put them out there before we vote on these last couple of spots.
Yeah. That's
I'm going to be perfectly honest about it and blunt. I will not have Tony Parker.
Oh, no.
Like under any circumstance. And it's not a shot at Tony Parker. But when I look at first of all, we got 3 more names that I think we're going to have on here, which would take us to 23.
Right.
And when I look at the list after that, where we haven't had Melo, Bosh, Davis, Dennis Johnson, I can't do it. And my main reason why is that, and I know we can't get into the hypothetical game, but in my head I do, where I'm I feel like if Tony Parker's on 25 other franchises, I don't think he has the career that he did, and I think he really benefited from being in Pop's system. I love him as a player. I think he's what he did with the Spurs was great. I don't think they win those championships without him. Tim Duncan was great, Ginobili was great, but he was the number 2 there. Let's be honest. It was Duncan, and then it was Parker. It wasn't Ginobili was the second.
But could you argue that for Scottie Pippen? Scottie Pippen,
but Scottie Pippen defensively. Scottie, he's such a great two-way player, and we saw without MJ, he was a top 5 player in the NBA that season. So I think
he played with Chicago though. Not
true, he did, and that's why I don't want to get into the weeds of that part of it. That's just in my head.
That was the end of his career, though. He I think he's made an all-star team in Portland. Had he been in Portland in his 20s with Clyde Drexler, they probably would have won a championship.
So that's why I don't have Parker there, and I think that we've just got other names that, when I think of, all-time 75, I think that name.
Okay.
I just, that name, for me, comes to mind more.
Gotcha.
So one guy I think we should have on here, but we could be a bit divided on it, the guy that won the championship in Toronto.
Yep.
The guy that won the championship in San Antonio.
Oh.
Yep.
Kawhi Leonard.
Yep.
Here's the thing. Does he miss a lot of regular season games because of injury? Sure. But when it matters, he's near unstoppable. You look at that Milwaukee, this is the series to me that stands out and epitomizes who Kawhi Leonard is. Toronto is down 2-0 to Milwaukee, and they look dead in the water. And it's much like the Gary Payton MJ thing. He says, I want to guard Giannis. And he made the multiple-time MVP freeze.
Yep.
Like, he was rendered useless the rest of the series.
Yep.
They went on and won 4 straight. They go to the finals. Do they play a battered Golden State? Doesn't matter. They win the championship. He has some special moments on that run. He guarded LeBron very well when he was with the Spurs as well. I think Kawhi is an easy one. One of the best two-way players of all time.
I mean, if you look at that video in 2014 in the NBA Finals when Kawhi was coming back into the game, you can see LeBron's face was like, shit.
And it was like, shit.
And he knows that Kawhi's about that business. So, yeah, Kawhi's on my list.
He's the only guy in the league that I think in a one-on-one situation you can confidently say for certain, give it almost an equal to chance that he could stop Giannis and LeBron, then they would score. Like there for so long, like we always try to point out guys who are good defenders against like the types of Kobe, LeBron, and Giannis. Kawhi to me is the only guy in the league who he could go up against either of them one-on-one, and it's like there's a chance that he stops them just as much as they're scoring this. Like it's close. It's as close to 50-50 of a miss or make for LeBron and Giannis that it can be if it's Kawhi guarding him. And yeah, 2-time defensive player of the year, still to this point in his career, more steals than fouls.
Yep.
Heck yeah, he's on this list.
He's on this list. Yep.
Okay. Jurg, you said that you had a couple names left.
So Kawhi was one of them. Okay. So Kawhi was one of them. Let me just make sure I run through and I don't forget anyone. Okay, so this is the last name on my list that we haven't spoken about. And it's only taken us just over an hour, boys. I'm proud. Paul Pierce,
I got him.
I think deserves a mention at least. 10-time All-Star, 4 All-NBA, 08 champion, Finals MVP. Like, I think when we talk about what guys did for organizations, we've had a couple of those names brought up. Like Paul Pierce being there the entire time for Boston. I know he got traded to the end of his career, but for well over a decade being a Celtic, like kind of embodying everything. Like KG and Ray Allen themselves have said, like, even though people look at it as like, well, Ray Allen's offense meant more than Paul Pierce because he was so dynamic with three-point shooting, or KG's defense made a bigger difference in that final series. Like Paul Pierce was the heart and soul of that Celtics championship team.
Yep.
Because he was there early in his career. Him and Antoine Walker, he had that like legendary moment where him and I think Al Harrington, like he was just jawing off with Al Harrington, pulls up with 2 dribbles and just buries it in his face. They made a conference finals run early in his career. I think they lost to one of those Jason Kidd's Nets teams.
Yeah.
Before they had a little bit of a decline. And that's not on, like, the thing is, you can't put it on these guys when their teams have declines. That's on management. That's on the general manager building the team
around him.
Exactly. That's not on Paul Pierce. And in those seasons, he still was an all-star, still put 20-plus points, would still do his thing. Like Kobe, LeBron, like all those guys have put their names to it that Paul Pierce is one of the best competitors that they've personally went up against. Like if those guys are, if Kobe and LeBron say it, like then it matters. So Paul Pierce is in my top 25.
Paul Pierce is the motherfucking truth. The Shaq said it, after he scored 40 on a really good Lakers team. Shaq pulled the dude aside and said, Paul Pierce is the motherfucking truth. So he is obviously on my list.
On this list.
On my list easily.
Like even when Kobe and that talk about like some of their toughest guys to go up against, it's always like Pierce's name is always in there. Like what he did in the mid range. I mean, we can talk about that bullshit in the wheelchair that he pulled. But talk about some bullshit there. Like we talk about soccer players flopping. Like let's talk about that. But no, all time wise, like Pierce is great.
Yes.
Was he because? Ken, if you said like there were 2 guys that you thought were going to get those next spots, was he one of those guys, or do we still got one more name?
Pierce was one of those guys. I've got 2 guys that play similar position.
This is going to be good.
Tracy McGrady. Now, here's the thing. If we're talking about the McGrady Magic years, and even a couple years that he had in Houston where he was really good, we're talking about one of the best, like he was like Kevin Durant before Kevin Durant as far as scoring goes, because he had the size because he was 6'9", just all around, could hit the 3 ball, hit the mid range, could finish at the rim. The only thing that hurts his case is the injury side of things. It's very much a Grant Hill argument of like, well, he looked really good, but I still think he had those years in Orlando and in Houston that would push him above. judging by your facial expressions, he's not on your list. But it was a name that I wanted to throw out there. I mean, Mo wouldn't have him in his top 150 because he's not a Hall of Famer. So I had to throw his name out there to give him some love. I kid, of course.
If I may, on T-Mac really fast, because how many spots do we have left? 3?
So we've got 3 left.
So let's name our final names here to just put up for debate, and then let's go through it, because I think that's what we can do.
The last player that I had that we can either add to the list or we can just put him on there, because I don't know if you have him, is Vince Carter, because I think when I'm talking about the 75 players, you think about Carter in Toronto and how that franchise is not around without Vince. Like, that franchise folds. Like, we probably don't have the NBA in Canada if Vince doesn't have those years that he has. Even his Nets years. Like, if you look at the length of his scoring output, like, it was like 8 or 9 years where he was a 25 point per game scorer, and he hit big shots in the playoffs. He did a lot of things. If he makes that shot against Philadelphia, we might have a completely different career trajectory for Vince Carter. So I know that you guys don't have him there, but it's a name that I wanted to throw in there because, the second half of his career, like, obviously he bounced around and stuff, but also there's something to be said for the fact that he played in 4 different decades, and he played the most seasons, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's the number one.
He's another guy. Like, I just want to revisit. Like, I want to hear all the names for the last 3 spots.
So I just wanted to put that name in there before we now go. JP, is there any other names that you want to submit, or any other that we haven't? Because the names that I have listed: T-Mac, Vince, Melo, Davis, Bosh, Dennis Johnson, and then I guess Tony Parker.
You can take DJ off there for me. Like,
he's a key. No, that's a good argument with Dennis Johnson. Pretty much, I went through my whole list. The person I would like to add that could be up for consideration is Paul Gasol.
Paul Gasol.
Paul Gasol could be up for for consideration here. I forgot how many All-Stars he made. 2-time NBA champion. I mean, the European influence in the game. He's another person that I would like to add, but like I said, I don't have him on my list, but he's like right there on the outside looking in. So
that leaves us. So I'll list off the names that we have.
I got one last name.
Okay,
go ahead. You mentioned him, Grant Hill. How the heck have we not? Okay, you kind of mentioned him in passing, but I'm like, how have we not had G Hill on there?
Okay, we'll put the name there because I
don't mean the top 25. I mean like the rest of.
Okay, so LeBron, you guys count these off so that way I'm not crazy. Kobe,
LeBron,
Mcadoo,
Kobe,
Wilkins, Payton, Howard, Durant, Garnett, Nowitzki, Curry, Antetokounmpo, Duncan, Wade, Paul, Iverson, Harden, Westbrook, Allen, Kidd, Nash, Leonard, Pierce.
22.
So we got 3 more slots, I believe.
3 more slots. Okay.
22.
And the nominees are.
So what I think we should do is we should eliminate those that only one guy likes. Which, so in that case, Vince is off, right? Because I'm the only one that has Vince. T-Mac, I'm the only one that has T-Mac. So he's off. Anyone have Gasol?
Nah, we can just.
I don't either. So he's off. Carmelo, 2 of us have. Davis, 2 of us have. Bosh, 2 of us have. Because I switched my tune on Bosh after Jerg's argument. So shout out to Jerg for the argument. Dennis Johnson. How many do we have on DJ?
I think it was just me.
I think it was just you. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I want to visit that one.
I want to revisit Dennis. Yeah, he shouldn't be off.
Tony Parker.
He's up for it. I would say he's up for it.
I think just JP had him in the top 25, but I think he's up. I think he's worthy of
okay.
He should go back. We should go back to him.
Okay, so let's start with Parker because, like, right now he's kind of at the bottom, I would say, of the 5 names that we have. But what is the case for Tony? Is it the the championships with the Spurs and his role in those championships? Is it just his skill set? Like, JP, what is it for you about Parker?
I'm just looking at the accolades. You can't deny like a 6-time All-Star. You can't deny a 4 championships. You can't deny the Finals MVP that he had. That 07 Finals where he had a run. Just nobody could not stop him. He was the best player on the floor at that time. And, his run in 2013, if they would have won that title in 2013, I think we would have this would have been a different debate and everything. If he would have won, he would have been the Finals MVP. I feel like Tony in that Spurs system, like, Duncan was getting older. Duncan was still like impactful, but Tony Parker, like I don't think they could win anything without Tony Parker and like, his contribution to that Spurs and all that. So it's hard for me not to put him on this list because I know he only played for one team and then he went to Hornets and didn't really do anything. But that was when he was older and that was him I guess trying to find ways to get back into greatness. But yeah, I think Tony deserves to be on my list. But I mean, it's up for consideration. I got stars beside him because it's like. It's tough at the same time to argue. So
looking at the numbers comparison between him and DJ, because I think we're comparing like similar guys, similar position and everything. So Tony's a 15.5 guy. DJ's a 14-5 guy as far as numbers go over their careers. Mm-hmm. Tony has the edge in the number of championships. They're both finals MVPs. So those kind of cancel each other out. The one thing that I think favors DJ is the defense side.
Yes.
Because Tony
is not a great defender.
Did not defend ever. Sorry, he didn't defend often.
He's not a great defender.
He didn't defend often.
Yeah.
So that would be my only thing. I also think, so we can't put Tony's European stuff in because like people...
It's just NBA.
It's just NBA. So I think that hurts Tony there because if this was just 75 greatest basketball players,
he might be up there.
I think he's in there because you look at the fact that he's a 2-time FIBA Europe Player of the Year. He's a Eurobasket MVP.
Yep.
Like he's got a lot of these stats over Europe.
Somewhere Mo is simmering because of the idea that Vlade Divac could be on that list.
Oh, we got to submit Vlade now. Okay, so let's talk about Vlade. Actually, one name that I want to mention that was a 90s guy that had he not passed early, I think would have been in consideration. Would have been Drazen. Because, man, talk about a special talent that was just starting. He's a guy that got to the Nets and was so good and unfortunately passed too young, but he's a guy that I think we would have been talking about on this list for sure. He was a guy that shot it at the clip that like Curry did, except he did it in the 90s. So
Reggie say he was a better shooter than him. That's all you have to say.
Yeah, like if Reggie's telling you you're a better shooter, like damn, you got a shooting stroke. So that's why I lean DJ over Tony, because I think a lot of the Tony stuff we think about his overall basketball impact, and it's less about the NBA side because I think the Spurs just had a really good roster too. Like the fact that he played with Ginobili, who's a future Hall of Famer. You've got Duncan, Hall of Famer, and they had a lot of great role players over the years, the Bruce Bones of the world and others. So that's why I would lean DJ. Now that's also like DJ played with Larry Bird, Parrish, and McHale. So it is tough, but what he did with the Sonics, I think, is what gives me the DJ edge here.
So yeah, it's up to Drug. Who is it? Tony Parker? Is it DJ? It's up to you.
I'm sorry, JP, but I had him in my top 25. I got to run with my guy. I got to run with Dennis Johnson.
This is not putting DJ on the list yet. It's just eliminating Tony.
So Tony be off the list.
Chris Bosh.
We've got Davis, AD. Anthony, Bosh, and DJ. 4 guys for 3 spots. Which actually, you want to know what's funny enough about this list as a whole is that we've had 1 center.
Yeah.
Oh, just Dwight, right?
It's just Dwight.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, we said at the very beginning the evolution of the game.
The evolution of the game.
Use that evolution.
And I bet you of those guys in the first like 50, you probably got like 15, 20 centers in there.
Oh yeah.
So heavy center bias there.
God.
So
modern world.
Yes.
I mean, I'll be honest. I think I want to put Chris Bosh on there after not originally having him in my list. And the multiple-time champion, great. The 11-time All-Star, though, 11 in a row. We're saying that for over a decade, he was
one of the top
10 player in his conference. Now, outside of that, he doesn't have defensive teams. He's only got the one All-NBA team. So that hurts his case.
Yeah.
Because we're saying that Bosh was really good for a long time, but he wasn't like the next level, like the LeBron type guys, right? Like the real superstars.
Right.
But he does have longevity, which, I mean, his career numbers, he's a 19-8-2 guy, which is nice numbers. But the two guys ahead of him in Carmelo and Davis, I think, at least scoring wise, would be ahead of him.
I think Bosh kind of got hurt because he, like, it was an era where KG was still KG, Dirk was still Dirk. Tim
Duncan.
Like,
people forget Duncan was still making all NBA first team at like 37 years old.
Exactly. So you still have them. And if they would have like faded, Chris Bosh definitely could have been an all NBA team, but it's just tough. It is super tough though.
There's technically a simple way of doing it, which is we have 4 names. Who is the one player you would leave off out of those 4? Out of Carmelo, Davis, Bosh, and Johnson. Because if 2 of us rule out the same name, then that's the list.
Right.
If we all have different ones,
I think the thing right now is like there's at least 2 of us that agree that all 4 guys could be on there.
I would say the person I would take off out of those 4, because those are really good arguments too. I love AD to death, and I think he got more in terms of his future and everything. I think Davis might be the last person that everybody chooses and all that. Because Melo, obviously, the scoring that he did and consistent. I think he's the only person that averaged 20 points a game each of his seasons. Like, I don't think nobody else could do that. I think Anthony Davis will probably be the last one. Dennis Johnson, we already went through his acclimates, what he did with the Celtics in the 80s, Finals MVP with the Sonics. Chris Bosh, the 11-time All-Star in a row.
So here's the thing about Davis. So if we're talking about resume, champion last year or 2 years ago, 8-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA first team, which means 4 times he was named a top 5 player in the league for that year. He's all defensive team 4 times, and he led the league in blocks 3 times. So we are ruling out.
It's a heck of a resume.
That's a heck of a resume. That's why I had him on my list.
So if we're talking about Bosh has 11 All-Stars and none of those accolades, and Davis has 8 All-Stars and all those accolades.
And all those accolades, and he's a champion too.
And he's won a champion.
And he was a main part of that. I'm thinking about it because, Davis
Bosh was never defensive. He was never All-NBA first. He was All-NBA second once. And
Davis was a main integrate, with LeBron in terms of winning that title with the Lakers. He hit that big shot. I forgot what team it was.
Oh, it was against Denver. It was against Denver.
Game 2. Big shot.
He hit the game winner.
So, and Davis, when he was with New Orleans, I mean, if he wasn't injury prone, he was probably the best big in the NBA. I still think he could be the best big in the NBA, but I
think he is the best big man in the NBA.
I don't know, because there might be some.
Well, do you consider Giannis a big? Because then that's a different story.
That's what I'm saying. Giannis is probably going to overtook Davis though, but Davis at that one time was the best big, and nobody was even close.
Melo Melo's 10-time All-Star. He's 6-time All-NBA, but never first team. 4 of those are third-team All-NBAs.
And he only made one conference
and he's
finals,
a
right?
scoring champ without a title.
Yeah, he only got one conference finals, and that was against Kobe.
Yeah. God. I mean, that's what's tough about these resumes is that, so are we going to value Bosh for winning multiple championships, but never being like a top 5 player at his position? Well, not his position in the NBA at that time. He was always top 5 at his position. Are we going to value Davis, who's won a title, doesn't have as many All-Stars, but has been considered more elite during his time? Or are we going to have Melo, who's kind of in the middle of those two, but like no titles?
Well, I think that I can imagine there's one person out there right now saying, just drop DJ and keep the other 3.
But then we're dropping a finals MVP.
That's true. That's true.
And then freaking championship.
Which is something that none of these guys have done.
Right.
Yeah. And 3-time champion. And
okay, here's what we'll do. We're going to count down from 3. And we're all going to say who is left off of our list.
Oh, no.
Okay?
Okay.
So, 3, 2, 1. Chris Bosh. Wow. Unanimous.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe.
I love Bosh.
I love Bosh too, but
it's just
he just doesn't have the all NBA accolades like Davis does. That's the thing that killed it, though. And like I said, he was the man in Toronto, but you had them power forwards that was over him, like a Duncan, Garnett, and Dirk. And Davis didn't really
solidifies our list.
Yes. So I'm sorry, Bosh. I'm sorry.
An hour and a half.
So the names that we have that we'll put out graphic wise: LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Bob Mcadoo, Dominique Wilkins, Gary Payton, Dwight Howard, Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, Stephen Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Tim Duncan, Dwyane Wade, Chris Paul, Allen Iverson, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Ray Allen, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Kawhi Leonard, Paul Pierce, Carmelo Anthony, Anthony Davis, Dennis Johnson.
There we go.
With Chris Bosh being the elusive 26.
So yes, that's a wrap right there. That is a wrap for the NBA Next 25. If you're tuning in, comment down below and tell me who you think could have been on the top 25, or comment who shouldn't have been on the top 25. Just comment down below. Follow Off the Ball Network on all your social media platforms, and also check out offtheballnetwork.com for all your sports needs. These two guys, unbelievable podcast. Definitely check them out. Can tell us about your upcoming work for your Shooters Shoot and Bets on Bets and Breaking the Game?
There's just so much. No, so we've got Breaking the Game tomorrow on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. Myself and JP had a great show, so be sure to check that out. Top 25 through 11 players list for myself as well as the Pacific Division. Preview. Shooters Shoot is back on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I've got my guy Jelani on as a guest. We're going to be previewing the NBA season, talking some NFL at the end, so a lot of good stuff happening there. Doing a show on Thursday with Mo and Cole, another NBA preview show, so stay tuned for that. Probably going to be on See You Sunday, Bets on Bets. Got articles dropping all the time. The NFL articles I've been doing from a betting perspective. We're up 20 units, which means if you've been betting $20 a bet, you'd be up over $400 through 4 weeks. So lots of profit there as well. So check those out. Golf betting articles as well. There's just a lot of stuff happening. And just check out Off the Ball Network. I mean, my bookie, we've got phenomenal sponsors over there for your betting needs. Play Pickup is another great sponsor that we have. Make your free picks there if you're not looking to put some money down, but you want to win some great prizes. Go do Play Pickup. Just have to enter your phone number in order to be signed up there. And guys, this was a ton of fun. I'm glad that we we're able to discuss this and iron it out, because this is the official list now. Like it's set in stone. I don't care what anyone says. So.
Solidified. Joe, talk about your upcoming work for the Button Bruises podcast. What you got?
So, B&B Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. You guys can catch us then, and then it's put up on Apple and Spotify. This past episode, actually, we went in depth on the beginning of the Major League Baseball playoffs, and because we're smack dab in the middle of the week, we're going to be having a lot of updates on the playoffs with how some of these series are going. Couple series at two, actually no, only one series is at 2-0 right now in the best of fives in the AL and NLDS. Everything else is best of at 1-1. I think I'm probably going to assume most of the series will be done come the next episode. So there's going to be a lot of analysis on what happened come our next show. But yeah, just make sure you catch Buns and Bruises. My guy Bars, the baseball Don himself, is going to be leading the charge there. And this past episode, we had a good friend of mine, Dame, who also he podcasts as well on the Somewhat Sports podcast. He joined us. Great baseball analysis all around there. And of course, there's also hockey there, but we're waiting. Baseball's got to take a little bit of precedent right now. But yeah, and I could be me and James, we have to talk about it, but there could be a first time ever on the show this Wednesday. Potentially. We have to iron out the details. There could be something that happens for the first time in B&B history. So. It's not as spectacular as I'm making it sound. It's all about how you sell it, boys.
Yeah, oversell, underdeliver, right?
Hey, there you go. I can't wait for that. And you can catch my work on my YouTube channel. It's just JP that you see it at the @ Follow me on YouTube. Just put out the NBA 75th commercial trailer reaction that just hit 1,000 views within 2 days. And I'm definitely coming out with the LeBron James versus Michael Jordan comparison. Hopefully today, it could be this week. And check me out on my other different podcasts and JP Franchise 57 on Twitter and Justin Payton on Facebook. Love to debate hoops and everything. Guys, it's been a ton of fun. And I thank y'all for joining in with me. And we are out of here, y'all. Peace. Let me go ahead and hit that end then right here.